Hello, I'm James Warren, and I'm with the Denver Urbanism Podcast. Today, I have a very special interview with Chuck Marohn.
That's right.
Chuck is the founder of Strong Towns, which watchers and listeners will remember from our episode on Strong Denver. It's an organization, I'll try to summarize it here, that is interested in improving the financial stability of cities by better using land use throughout the cities. Is that close?
I could go with that. I mean, we're trying to build strong cities, and strong cities have good balance sheets. They're also good places to live. They also have lots of housing that's affordable. They've got safe streets. So it's a lot. There's a lot to it, but we've got a great local group here who's doing a lot of that work, and we're leading the effort nationally.
Yeah, great. Well, let's jump into it. I'm first interested, just to kind of set the stage, today we were at the Denver South conference and talking about how an area like Denver South, which is more suburban type, it's got some clusters of density, but it's a little bit more suburban compare that to Denver, which is much, much more urban. Right. How do you see a strong towns approach to development in those two contexts, and how do they diverge over the next 25 years?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think what we have to recognize is that the DNA of historic Denver, the downtown, the surrounding neighborhoods, that is a DNA that was pre-Great Depression. It's the historic DNA. And even the stuff that was done as like streetcar type suburbs, these places are built on a gridded pattern that is very amenable to change, adaptation, incremental growth, investment. Those things can be everywhere from a single family home all the way up to Manhattan.
Yeah.
And like everything in between. And there are really good development models for evolving them over time. When we get out to this part of the world, and really much of what has been built in the Denver region post World War II and, kind of accelerating in the 90s and so on, that is a different DNA. And the DNA of those places are designed, the marketing brochure is that we're going to build it all at once, and it's not really going to change. And so you have a lot more cul-de-sacs, a lot less connectivity, a lot more stroads and major arterials, and things that are designed in their essence not to be anything except what they are. It's really hard to take a drive-through restaurant and make it into a house.
Right.
It is a lot easier to take, a block of homes and commercial properties in a traditional downtown and mature them into other things over time. And so I think the challenge that you have here is, how do we introduce complexity? How do we introduce adaptation into a framework that's designed not to evolve and change?
Yeah, interesting. So I'm interested, in Denver, we have probably underbuilt for the last 10 to 15 years.
You're no different than everybody else.
Right, yes.
Right.
There's tons of reasons for that. At Strong Towns, you advocate for a more incrementalist approach, right? I think that that kind of runs sometimes up against what happens is suddenly we're going to rezone this parcel, that more can be built here, and then people are going to build as much as they can because we have it's like 30,000 unit delta between where we need to be. Right. So I guess my first question is is that ever appropriate? Is it ever okay to just kind of say, we're just going to build big because we weren't doing it for a long time? Yeah. And then secondly, how do you do that in a context appropriate way?
These are hard, nuanced things. And I don't think there is an absolute right answer or an absolute wrong answer. Let's talk about trade-offs for a second. Yes, you're behind in the things that you need to build, right? So the idea is that if we're behind, let's kind of flood the zone and get as much as we can. Yeah. I think when we go the large leap route, what we are doing is we are kind of putting into place something that is going to be noticeable change all at once. I can see it. Yeah. I get it. Okay, there's 200 more units here. Wow, that's great. But on the downside, what we're also doing is we are committing to a model of large developers. So in a sense, you're kind of limited by what they do. Today, we're seeing the capital market, the macro capital markets shift and change. And a lot of projects that might have penciled 5 years ago don't pencil now at that scale. Yeah. And so there's a pullback. And so in a sense, you give up a little bit of your autonomy in order to have big, what I would say are noticeable gains in the landscape. When you work in a more incremental fashion, what you see is that the gains tend to be less like immediately noticeable. We built a backyard cottage here. We converted a single family home to a duplex here. But they're much more, in a sense, like democratic. We are not limited to a dozen big players. We literally have like an unlimited number. You could decide tomorrow, you know what, I could really use a backyard ADU. It would finance my place better, and I'm going to do that. All of a sudden, you're part of the development solution. So it's much easier to like onboard lots and lots of people. And then the market responses are a little bit different. So if interest rate changes or the funding preference at Fannie Freddie shifts, you're not held hostage to that. You literally can just look around and say, where's there demand in my neighborhood and how do I respond to that?
Yeah.
So to me, the idea of incremental is really a commitment to a broad-based, kind of all-in, let's go kind of churn in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I do think the tension with the large leap is that the large leap creates an underlying framework, both in a permitting and approval process, but also in like how you value land, that is kind of geared around a few exclusive players.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah.
So I won't I often get, okay, Chuck, we got a transit stop here. Don't we need something big around it? And I'm like, yeah, like it would have been nice to have something around it before you built a transit stop.
Sure.
But now you kind of committed to this. You kind of got to fix that by having something there. So go for it.
Right.
Should that be the same 8 blocks away? Well, if you do, you're probably not going to get both, or you're going to get something that kind of, again, Frankenstein DNA doesn't exactly work in the place.
Right. And it just is a lesson for next time we develop a transit stop. Let's try to put them in the...
Well, let's have a plan to actually, if you're building a transit stop because you're trying to build a place, let's have a plan to build a place. Yeah. And let's start working on that before we even get the transit stop.
Yeah, I think I saw a blog on Strong Towns about rephrasing a development-oriented transit versus transit-oriented development. It might have been a Jared Walker.
No, it was me.
It was you. Okay.
And Jared and I actually debated this a little bit. I love him, and he's really brilliant, and I think he's forgotten more about transit than I know.
Sure, yeah.
But I said, instead of transit-oriented development, why don't we have development-oriented transit? Why don't we actually start with development and then serve that development with a level of transit that would make it more viable and even, to the next level of intensity viable.
Yeah.
That's not always the sexiest because our federal programs are set up to like build the big transit project.
Sure.
But if the goal is to build a great neighborhood that is walkable and bikeable and then allow those people to, without a car, get to someplace meaningful, there's a lot of adaptation we can do short of the big project that is really quick and really easy.
Yeah. So going from that bigger scale to that smaller scale, Denver, we have universal ADU. You can, if you have a single unit home, you can build a ADU in the back. That is by right now. Permitting is getting better. We have single stair now. There's some improvements that are made, but 77% of the city of Denver is still zoned for single unit homes.
Right.
You're sitting down with the mayor of Denver. What advice do you give him to say, when we start looking at that 77%, what are we doing to make sure that there's that incremental approach you're looking for?
It's a good question because we always say every neighborhood needs to be able to evolve and adapt. And I actually did a T-shirt once, and we didn't actually print it because no one understood it. I'm an engineer geek. But I said like delta, which is engineering terms like the change, is greater than 0. Yeah. And that's kind of like your neighborhood has to have a delta that's positive. Sure. If you have a neighborhood of single family homes, what's the delta? I mean, it's a duplex. Like that's
right.
How do you not like what a 1.5 unit? Like I don't know what it is. It's a duplex.
Yeah.
And so to me, we've had these kind of like internal debates of like what would be a mandated thing versus a encouraged thing. I think there's a question about how you roll it out.
Yeah.
I think just from a human standpoint, doing broad, like everybody must do this is harder politically. I'm going to Littleton tomorrow and they're having this debate because they're having a big backlash to their attempt to try to do that. But I feel like in Denver, what you do have is you do have some really exciting neighborhoods that are experiencing change and adaptation and thickening up. And what I would like to do is take neighborhood leaders from other places that are maybe a little freaked out about this and say, hey, let's go check this place out. Let's have a meeting together. We'll meet at this coffee shop over here. And then we'll walk around this neighborhood. And guess what? This place has got all kinds of cool things happening, stuff going on. Like, your neighborhood's kind of stagnating. I realize you like it and don't want it to change, but this isn't scary. This isn't bad.
Right.
I feel like there's a little, let me put it this way. I think often in an urbanist conversation, we're comfortable with the tools of zoning and regulation. And actually, a lot of these things need the tools of interpersonal communication. I've said I think city staff should be 4 times the size of what they are now.
Sure.
But I think they should have half the number of technical people.
Okay.
That gap is like social workers and people who do conflict resolution and all that. Because really what we need is more block level, neighborhood level dialogue around this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No,
I think I'll go with one more.
Okay.
So Denver, right now, we had I think probably a lot of cities experienced this. We experienced it pretty hard. Work from home meant a lot of office vacancies.
Yeah.
Sales tax, which provides 2/3 of the city budget, went out, and there's a $250 million shortfall next year. Denver laid off 169 city employees and is cutting all kinds of other things that the city is doing.
Yeah.
That's tragic. That's terrible. But it is a unique time in history where we have this outflow of office and a new question of what do we do with that space and how do we reinvigorate the city.
You're going to ask me that question.
So my question is, this is a unique time in history. What would be the Strong Towns approach to making sure that we're on the right track?
Wow. So I feel like you're asking me to solve the problem that we said you shouldn't do, right? Which is like, okay, you went out on this limb. You built this non-adaptable, massive thing.
Yeah.
You made your budget highly dependent on its success. And then when the asteroid hit and the dinosaur died, you're asking me, like, how would you reuse its carcass? And I'm like, well, you might have to wait 1 million years for it to turn into oil, and then there might be another use for it. Like, I don't have a good answer for what, someone like Jim Kunstler, I think, wrote in the 90s when he wrote The Geography of Nowhere, that this is vertical sprawl. Leon Creer would say that. And I don't have a solution for that predicament, right? We've made some bad decisions along the way, and some of it is just going to be like dealing with that. I think the question, to me, there's a couple questions. Like, one, what do you do with those buildings?
Yeah.
And then two, what do you do with the budget shortfall? I feel like the budget shortfall one is easier for me to answer. I talked to someone last night who said, well, they're cutting all the maintenance in the business improvement district in the core downtown, or they're really reducing that. And I look at your core downtown and I say, even without the office buildings, this is geography that is paying the freight for everything else. Like, you should want to keep that as vibrant and healthy as it can, because when you invest $1 there and you get $10 back, that's $9 more you've got to spend other places. If you pull that investment and instead of getting that $10, you're not getting it, now you're not only robbing that place of vitality, but you're robbing the rest of your community of vitality too. So to me, I would want to look at what my most productive neighborhoods are, and I would want to make sure I don't kind of across the board cut, starve them of the investment they need to be good places.
Yeah.
I think the buildings, there was a really interesting article a couple of weeks ago about how, they can't easily be adapted into housing unless you wanted to make them like dormitory style things, because like the bathrooms are in weird places. And and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that will work. But I really don't. Sometimes these types of things are just there to be a warning to others not to do that again.
Fair enough.
And I feel like if we were going to learn a lesson, doing big, grand things that can't be adapted and changed is like not a good idea.
Yeah.
Is that? I know I didn't.
No, that's okay. I mean, if there were an easy answer, we probably wouldn't have a $250 million shortfall.
Well, I feel like you may get like hucksters who would come in and say, "Here's what we would do," and I'm just kind of like impulsively resistant to that, because if it was easy to solve, everybody would have solved it.
Right.
Everybody has the same problem.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got a disaster. I saw one building where it was like, In 2019, it was purchased for hundreds of millions.
Yep.
And then it just sold for tens of millions.
Yeah.
So I don't know the exact numbers.
I think it was
but
like $3 million if I remember seeing the
I
rates.
looked at it and
Crazy.
I almost like lost my lunch. I'm like, this is really bad.
Yeah.
Because not only was that place bad, but then you got to look across the street and up the block, and like
Mm-hmm.
everybody does comps.
Right,
And I
right.
mean, they're just like, okay, my portfolio is not worth what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And that has huge implications for everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a pickle, but yeah.
It is. We're gonna be fed like jars of pickles
Sure.
in the coming decades,
Yeah.
and I think the more we can learn from it, and the more we can build places that are adaptable, the more these problems become
Right.
opportunities as opposed to titanic disasters.
Yes. And we're looking at 77% of the city saying single unit zoning, right? Well, maybe we are stuck with this office building, but we can look at that approach for the
You
rest
got a lot
the
you can
city.
do, but those places weren't the cash cow.
Sure,
The problem
right,
is
right.
you built a whole ton of infrastructure based on a cash cow
Yeah.
that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that cheery
Hey!
note, that's we're out of time. So I really appreciate it, Chuck. Thanks so
man.
much.
So nice
And,
to meet you.
yeah,
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
very much. Yeah.